Have you ever felt that your own mind becomes too small a place for so much emotion? There are days when nothing serious, nothing terrible, nothing extraordinary has happened. And yet you find yourself breathing faster, overthinking, feeling something inside you slipping out of your hands. It's like carrying an invisible weight on your chest, as if your insides were full, saturated, constricted. And then you ask yourself, why do I get so overwhelmed? Why do I feel this emotional exhaustion for no apparent reason? Why does one part of me want to keep moving forward, while another part just wants to disappear for a while? Emotional distress is one of the most insidious forms of modern suffering. It doesn't scream, it doesn't erupt, it doesn't explode. It accumulates, it leaks, it creeps into your thoughts, it fills your mind drop by drop, until one day, without knowing why, you find yourself on the verge of internal collapse. Buddhism teaches that stress does not arise from what happens outside, but from the way your mind sustains itself internally. It's not the world that weighs you down, it's the way you carry it. It's not the emotion that breaks you, it's the resistance to feeling it. It's not tiredness that defeats you, it's the lack of space to breathe. It's not life that overwhelms you, it's your mind trying to hold more than it can process without being present. In reality, feeling overwhelmed is nothing more than a sign, a warning, an inner whisper that tells you you are disconnecting from your center. You're accumulating too much. You are living from your head and not from your conscience. You're reacting more than you're breathing. And yet, almost no one understands the message. Almost everyone does the opposite. They demand more of themselves. They speed up more. They try to control more. They try to solve more. And that only fuels the feeling that something inside is about to overflow. Buddhism offers a radically different view. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're not losing control. You're simply disconnected from yourself. Overwhelm arises when the mind gets too far ahead, when it wants to solve more than it can handle, when it constructs scenarios that haven't happened, when it fills itself with borrowed thoughts from the future and frozen emotions from the past. The present, then, feels insufficient, and you feel small within your own life. But there is something profoundly liberating. Emotional distress is not an enemy. It's a door, an invitation to return to your inner self, to rediscover a space you forgot, to recover a clarity that was always there, but that the noise obscured. You don't need to be someone different. You don't need to eliminate your emotions. You don't need to be stronger, more disciplined, or more perfect. You need to understand how your mind works when it's overwhelmed, and how you can release that burden without fighting with yourself. Buddhism teaches 6 methods that dismantle stress at its root. These are not control techniques, nor quick tricks, nor strategies for positive thinking. They are deep, internal tools that restore your ability to breathe emotionally. They are paths to a state where your mind ceases to be a narrow room and becomes a wide, bright, stable space. These are methods that don't teach you to run away from overwhelm, but to let overwhelm dissolve, because it no longer has anything to cling to within you. But before revealing them, you need to understand the nature of overwhelm. Overwhelm arises when what you feel cannot find a place within you, when emotions build up because they haven't been seen, when thoughts grow because they have not been questioned, when energy stagnates because you haven't created space to let go, when your mind is so full of stories that there's no room left to breathe. And here's the most powerful part. Overwhelm is deactivated not by fighting against it, but by returning to yourself, returning to your body, to your breath, to your center, the only place where you truly have power. Imagine for a moment that your mind is like a glass full of water. Every worry is a drop in the ocean. Each repetitive thought is another one. Each external expectation is just one more. Every emotion not felt is another one. The glass doesn't break from the last drop. It breaks from not having emptied anything before. Buddhist methods are the way to empty that glass without breaking it. They are paths for the water to move again, for the mind to breathe, for your emotions to find a space where they can feel without you feeling lost. The first method is so essential that without it, the others do not work. It is the step that transforms overwhelm into clarity. It's something that very few people practice, but it can change your inner experience in a matter of seconds. It's not complicated, it's not mystical, it's not difficult. It's simply the door you need to open so that the overwhelm begins to lose its power within you. And that's the door we're going to enter through now. Emotional overwhelm has a very particular characteristic. It grows silently. It doesn't erupt immediately. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't appear suddenly. It accumulates. And this accumulation occurs because you are too much in your mind and too little in your body. Because you have become trapped in thoughts that won't stop, in scenarios that don't exist, in pressures that haven't yet arisen. Your breathing becomes shallow, your chest closes, your muscles tense, and your awareness drifts away from you without you even noticing. That is why the first Buddhist method is so essential, returning to the body to break the cycle of stress. It seems simple, but it is profoundly transformative. The body is the only place where the present happens. The mind, on the other hand, lives jumping between what has already happened and what has not yet arrived. And emotional distress always arises from that constant jumping. When you return to your body, you return to the now. And when you return to the present, the stress loses the ground where it grows. Buddhism teaches that the body is an anchor, a door, or phobia, a reminder that the present moment is bigger than any thought that is overwhelming you. But how do you return to your body when emotion overwhelms you? Not through force or control, but through something much more subtle. Feeling. The mind thinks, the body feels. And when you feel, the mind loses its grip for a moment. That moment is a breath of fresh air. That breath is freedom. And that freedom is the beginning of the end of the stress. Return to the body, observing what happens in it without trying to change it. Feel if your chest is closed. Feel if your shoulders are stiff. Feel if your jaw is clenched. Notice if your heart is beating faster. Feel if there is heat, cold, pressure, or vacuum. Don't interpret. Don't judge. Don't try to fix anything. Just feel. When you feel without fighting, something profoundly spiritual happens. The emotion begins to move. The pressure eases, even if only a little. The mind is reduced to a lower volume. Your breathing begins to return. Many believe that overwhelm is relieved by thinking better, thinking differently, thinking positively. But thought is precisely where anxiety is fed. The solution is never to overthink. It's about feeling more. Feel consciously, not fearfully. The body doesn't know how to lie. The body does not exaggerate. The body does not invent scenarios. The body does not anticipate tragedies. The body only speaks of what is happening now. That's why, when you return to it, the stress lessens. Because suddenly, your mind no longer has so much space to create harmful stories and is forced to return to what is real, to the present, to the immediate. Imagine someone trapped in a smoke-filled room. While in the smoke, everything seems confusing, oppressive, distressing. But if you open a window, even just a little, air will come in. That air doesn't eliminate the smoke immediately, but it changes the quality of the experience. Returning to the body is like opening that window. Overwhelm is mental smoke. The body is air. When your breathing becomes a little deeper, the overwhelm becomes a little smaller. When your shoulders drop even by a centimeter, your mind no longer feels so trapped. When your attention returns to the sensation, the thought loses its power. Breathing is the most direct way to return to the body. You don't need elaborate techniques, just a slightly more conscious inhalation and a slightly slower exhalation. The body understands. The mind keeps going. The stress stops. There's a saying in Buddhism that goes, "When you can't handle your mind, feel your feet." It's deeper than it seems. Feel the contact with the ground. Feel the temperature. Feel gravity holding you up. Feel the stability that your mind cannot give you. Feel the present that your mind cannot create. This method, although simple, can stop entire crises if you practice it honestly. You don't have to change your thoughts to stop feeling overwhelmed. You just have to change where your awareness is. When your consciousness leaves the noise and returns to the body, the emotion that seemed uncontrollable becomes manageable, becomes accessible, becomes human. Many people confuse feeling with suffering, but it's not the same. You suffer when you believe the mental story about what you feel. You free yourself when you allow the feeling to exist without turning it into a narrative. Feeling is bearable. Thinking without presence is what breaks you. That's why this first method is the gateway. First you return to the body, then breathing returns, then the presence returns, and then everything else falls into place. The stress doesn't disappear suddenly. It melts away, like ice that is no longer in the shade. A mind that has not learned to return to the body always lives on the surface, where everything affects it. A mind that knows how to do this finds an inner refuge to which it can return whenever emotion threatens to overflow. This is the method that calms the storm before trying to understand it. It's the method that brings you back to yourself when you've gone too far. It is the basis of the entire process of deactivating emotional overwhelm. And from this foundation, the second method emerges, one that works directly with the internal energy that stagnates when you become emotionally overwhelmed, a practice that releases accumulated tension without needing to fight it, and that creates internal space where there was previously pressure. That method will be the next step. There comes a point when feeling overwhelmed stops being a thought and becomes a physical sensation, as if your own inner energy has been trapped in a space that's too small. It feels like pressure in your chest, a lump in your throat, tension in your shoulders, a strange weariness that doesn't come from the body but from the soul. You don't know how to explain it, but you know it's there. And the more you try to ignore it, the stronger it becomes. Buddhism teaches that emotional distress is not just mental, it is energetic. Every emotion you don't express, every worry you don't address, every thought you suppress to keep going, remains suspended inside you like water that hasn't found its course. And when that water stagnates, overwhelm appears. That's why the second Buddhist method is so powerful, allowing trapped energy to move. It's not about fighting, analyzing, understanding, or solving. It's about letting what's blocked regain its natural movement. Emotion, when it flows, heals. Emotion, when it stagnates, becomes overwhelming. Most people live accumulating small emotions without realizing it. They didn't cry when they needed to. They didn't speak when they had to speak. They didn't rest when they were at their limit. They didn't tell each other the truth when it was time to do so. They didn't breathe when fear gripped them from within. And all that emotional energy remains suspended in the body like a vibration that never quite releases. Buddhism does not see emotions as enemies, but as waves that must be ridden. When an emotion moves on, it stops hurting. When it gets stuck, it becomes heavy. The method consists of allowing a small internal movement, an energetic gesture that opens the flow where there was previously tension. It can begin with something as simple as a deep sigh. That sigh that isn't voluntary, but almost instinctive. That sigh your body releases when it can no longer bear another burden. It's an internal loosening, a drop, a letting go, even if only for a moment. Breathing plays an essential role here. When you inhale, you receive. When you exhale, you release. And on the exhalation, if you do it slowly and consciously, you can feel something inside soften. It doesn't go away completely, but it softens. Stop being rigid. Stop being locked up. Sometimes, energy movement occurs in the form of heat. Other times, in the form of a shiver. Others, in the form of a slight tremor in the hands. Others, in a tear that falls without you having planned to cry. That's not fragility. It's liberation. It is stagnant energy regaining its path. The anxiety dissolves when the emotion starts moving again. Some people believe that keeping everything inside makes them strong. But true strength is not in containing. It is in allowing. Allow life to flow through you without trying to hold on to it all. Allow what hurts to be expressed in subtle ways. Allowing the energy you no longer need to find an outlet. Buddhism uses a very beautiful image to describe this, that of a river blocked by stones. The stones represent your tensions, your unexpressed emotions, your burdens, your fears, your accumulated worries. When the river tries to move forward, the water accumulates behind the stones. The more water arrives, the stronger the pressure feels. That's what overwhelm is. But if you remove a single stone, just one, the water starts moving again. There's no need to dismantle the entire wall. You just need to open a small channel. That small channel could be your breathing. It can be a sigh. It could be a tear. It could be the act of relaxing a little more than you were. It could be saying a truth you've been keeping to yourself. It might be to allow yourself a minute's pause. It may be about not forcing yourself to continue when your body tells you to stop. That small energetic movement releases something that had been pressed inside you for too long. Emotional distress doesn't go away just because you understand why you feel it. It goes away because you allow the body to stop supporting something it can no longer support. When energy moves, the mind stops feeling saturated, not because you solved your problems, but because you recovered inner space. And it is that space that allows you to think better, feel better, and decide better. Many people believe that calm comes when they resolve everything that worries them. But calmness is not an external result. It is an internal phenomenon. Calm comes when the body stops fighting against itself. When the stress lessens, even a little, the world feels less heavy. Your mind seems clearer. Your chest breathes deeper. Your body expands. Your presence returns. And then you can understand something that was previously impossible to see. You're not tired of your life. You're tired of holding on to emotions that haven't had room to move. You are not overwhelmed by the world. You are overwhelmed by the internal block that prevents you from flowing with it. This second method is the bridge between feeling and letting go. It is the step where you stop accumulating what you did not express. And only when you open that bridge can you enter into an even deeper practice, one that Buddhism considers fundamental to transforming your relationship with your emotions, the practice of conscious observation without identification. Because after moving the energy, the time comes to look at your inner world with a clarity you've never had before. And that's the place we're heading towards now. There is a huge difference between feeling an emotion and being captured by it. Feeling is human, natural, inevitable. But being captured is something else. It's when the emotion takes hold of you from within, pulls you in, envelops you, and turns you into its voice. It's when you no longer feel the emotion. The emotion feels you. And that is one of the deepest roots of emotional distress. Identification. Believing that what you feel is what you are. That anxiety is your identity. That anguish is your truth. That the internal pressure is you. That emotional exhaustion is your nature. But Buddhism is clear and forceful. You are not your emotions. You are not your mind. You are the one who observes. That sentence changes everything. The third Buddhist method for avoiding emotional overwhelm is this: observe without identifying with it. View your emotions as passing phenomena, not as permanent definitions. Feel them without letting them possess you. Recognize them without making them your identity. Allow them to exist without surrendering to them. The stress multiplies when you get confused about what's happening inside you. You don't realize it, but every time you say, "I'm feeling really bad, I can't take it anymore. Everything is overwhelming me," you are taking the momentary emotion and turning it into your way of being. That makes it bigger, heavier, more integrated into your identity. Buddhism teaches that emotions are like clouds. They appear, they change, they move, they dissolve. But the sky, your conscience, always remains intact. Clouds do not harm the sky. Emotions do not harm your essence. They're only hiding it temporarily. When you identify with the emotion, you become a cloud. When you look at it, you become sky again. Observing does not mean analyzing or controlling. Analyzing takes you deeper into your mind, and the mind is where the stress multiplies. Control only adds more tension to something that is already tense. Observing is a completely different act. It's looking inward as if you were a neutral witness. In other words, there is anxiety in me, but I am not anxiety. There is sadness in me, but I am not sadness. There is pressure in my chest, but I am not that pressure. There are racing thoughts, but I am not those thoughts. And when you do this, something extraordinary happens. Emotion loses its ability to sweep you away. It's still there, but you're no longer trapped inside it. It's like taking a step back, and suddenly your mind has more room to breathe. Mindful observation reduces overwhelm because it breaks the fusion between you and the emotion. You are no longer the whirlwind. You are the one who sees it. You are no longer the noise. You are the one who listens. You are no longer the wave. You are the ocean where the wave occurs. Emotion ceases to be an enemy and becomes a natural phenomenon, like an internal rain that falls to cleanse, not to destroy. The stress subsides because the emotion no longer feels eternal. When you're trapped, it seems like it will never end. When you observe, you remember that everything changes. That emotion has a cycle. What you feel now will not be what you feel in an hour, or tomorrow, or in a week. Buddhism teaches that suffering does not come from feeling, but from clinging to what you feel and turning it into your identity. Observation breaks that grip. When you observe without judging, without wanting to eliminate the emotion, without wanting to modify it, something inside you begins to relax. The body softens. The mind quiets down. The heart expands. You observe how the emotion appears, moves, grows a little, diminishes, changes shape. You see it as you would see a wave reach the shore. You don't become it. You only witness its movement. And the most interesting thing is that when you observe it this way, the emotion feels less threatening. It is no longer an internal monster. It is an internal movement. It's no longer a sentence. It's a feeling. He's no longer an enemy. He is a sign. Emotions want one thing: to be seen. When you're not looking, they scream. When you ignore them, they accumulate. When you reject them, they tense up. When you deny them, they imprison you. But when you observe them, they calm down. It's as if they were saying, "You're finally here. You finally recognize me. Now I can move." Mindful observation is a profound act of compassion towards yourself. It frees you from the struggle and gives you clarity. It brings you back to your center and takes you out of the whirlwind. And here something powerful happens. When you observe your emotions without fear, without resistance, without needing them to go away, they begin to fade away on their own. Because the distress doesn't come from the emotion itself, but from the resistance to feeling it. Observation allows you to stop resisting. And when resistance falls, emotion flows. And when it flows, the mind rests. And when the mind rests, the stress disappears. This method is like turning on a light in a dark room. Darkness doesn't disappear because you fight it, but because you illuminate it. Emotion doesn't disappear because you control it, but because you recognize it. And when you learn to observe, you no longer fear what you feel. You discover that nothing internal can destroy you when you don't identify with it. And from that, freedom arises the necessary space for the following Buddhist practice. The ability to let go of what doesn't belong to you, to release mental burdens you should never have carried, to let go of internal stories that keep you trapped in overwhelm. That will be the next step. There's an emotional burden that's more exhausting than any physical effort. The burden of carrying things inside you that aren't yours. Borrowed guilt, other people's expectations, responsibilities you took on without question, emotions from others that you adopted as your own, silences that weren't your duty, worries that weren't yours to resolve. All of that accumulates in the mind like extra weight, as if you were walking every day with an invisible backpack full of stones that over time leave you feeling emotionally drained. Emotional overwhelm has a deep root here, in holding more than your soul was designed to carry. Therefore, the fourth Buddhist method is a transformative practice, letting go of what does not belong to you. Let go mentally, emotionally, energetically. Let go of stories that are not yours. Let go of the problems you can't solve. Let go of the guilt you didn't sow. Let go of the need to fix everything. Let go of the role of holding the whole world in your hands. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises when you carry what is not yours to carry, and when you resist letting go of what no longer makes sense to carry. Overwhelm arises when your mind wants to be bigger than life itself, when it tries to encompass too much, when it cannot distinguish between what can be changed and what must be let go. And without realizing it, you end up exhausted by invisible responsibilities that rest on your shoulders without your consent. But letting go doesn't mean abandoning others, giving up your ties, becoming cold, selfish, or indifferent. Letting go means recognizing the natural boundary between your inner world and the world of others. It means telling yourself, I can accompany, but I can't carry. I can listen, but I cannot save. I can take care, but I can't control. I can love, but I cannot live for others. The stress begins to melt away when you accept that you are not responsible for anyone else's emotional life, that you are not the basis of other people's thoughts, that you cannot prevent others from suffering, nor can you force them to heal, nor can you be their permanent refuge when they don't want to take refuge in themselves. The fragile mind believes it must hold on to everything, that if it lets go, something will break. The unwavering mind knows that life flows better when you are not clinging to what is beyond you. Letting go is wisdom, not abandonment. Sometimes, letting go means giving up on understanding why someone acted the way they did. Give up on reliving conversations that have already taken place. Give up on imagining scenarios that don't depend on you. Give up the need for others to change so that you can be at peace. To relinquish the burden of emotions for those who refuse to feel them. When you let go, something magical happens. You regain space. Mental space. Emotional space. Internal space to breathe. And that space is exactly what the stress had stolen from you. Buddhism explains it with a beautiful metaphor. If you squeeze a handful of sand tightly, the sand slips through your fingers. If you loosen your grip, the sand rests gently in your palm. Life works the same way. Squeezing too hard exhausts you. What you hold gently stays where it should be. Emotional distress comes from squeezing too hard on things that should be held gently. Relationships, expectations, situations, emotions, ideas, memories. When you let go, you don't lose. You free yourself. But letting go is not a one-off act, but an internal attitude. It's not an event, it's a practice. That is, to tell you every day, this is not my place to defend. This isn't mine. This belongs to life, not to me. This needs to flow, and I must allow it. This has run its course in my heart. Most of the stress comes from the confusion between responsibility and attachment. You think that because you feel something, you should solve it. You think that because you love, you have to carry. You think that because you care, you should intervene. You think that because you are present, you must absorb. But none of that is true. Responsibility expands you. Attachment exhausts you. Love sets you free. Fear enslaves you. When you let go of what doesn't belong to you, your energy stops leaking into every corner of life. Stop letting unnecessary worries overwhelm you. Stop wasting money on scenarios you can't control. And for the first time in a long time, you feel the lightness you had forgotten. It's as if you've been holding a very taut, very strong rope for too long. Your hands hurt, your arms tremble, your mind is exhausted. Letting go is not giving up. It is allowing your hands to rest, your muscles to relax, and your mind to regain calm. When you let go, life returns to its natural form. What's yours stays with you. What isn't yours goes away. What belongs to you will return. What is beyond you finds another way. And this is where one of the most important transformations occurs. When you stop carrying the emotional weight of everything and everyone, you can finally take care of what truly belongs to you. Your own well-being, your own path, your own center. Only then does space appear for the next practice, one of the most powerful and unknown. The practice of creating inner silence, not external silence, but a mental space in which emotion can rest, where noise dissolves, and where you regain clarity even in the midst of chaos. And that's the place we're heading towards now. There's a kind of noise that doesn't come from the outside, but it's more exhausting than any sound in the world. Internal noise. That incessant murmur of thoughts, anticipations, doubts, interpretations, silent demands, memories that return unbidden, imaginary scenarios that strain you even though they don't exist. It's a noise you can't hear with your ears, but it reverberates inside you until you feel emotionally overwhelmed. That inner noise is one of the main causes of emotional distress. No matter how calm the world outside is, if your mind is full of noise, your inner self will be a cramped place where calm cannot enter. Therefore, the fifth Buddhist method to avoid emotional overwhelm is one of the most profound and essential: creating inner silence. Inner silence is not the absence of thoughts, but the absence of identification with them. It's not that the mind stops talking, it's that you stop responding to it. It's not about eliminating the noise, but about stopping the amplification of it. It's not about turning off your mind, but about reclaiming your place in it. Buddhism teaches that the mind is like a lake. When it's agitated, you can't see the bottom. When things calm down, everything becomes clear. Inner silence is that state in which the water stops moving, where the surface smooths out, and where you can see what previously seemed confusing. You don't need to go to a mountain to find that silence. You don't need to meditate for hours. You don't need to run away from the world. Inner silence is within reach of anyone who learns to stop the automatic reaction to thought. The internal noise is sustained by one thing only: your participation. Every thought becomes stronger when you follow it. Every worry becomes more real when you feed it. Every fear grows bigger when you shine your attention on it. Each doubt grows when you repeat it in your mind. When you withdraw your attention, the noise loses its power. When you don't respond, it dissolves. When you stop fighting him, he runs out of energy. Inner silence arises when you decide not to engage with every thought that comes up. When you watch the thought come and go, as if it were just a cloud crossing the sky. The cloud doesn't need your intervention. Thought, too. And here comes the powerful part. You don't need total silence to feel relief. All it takes is a small space between you and the thought. That space is freedom. That space is peace. That space is the end of the stress. Buddhism teaches a very simple and very transformative practice. When a thought arises, don't question its content. Question its relevance. Ask yourself, do I need to think about this now? Most of the time, the answer is no. When your mind is overloaded, it generates thoughts not because they are necessary, but because it is saturated. Internal noise is a symptom, not a truth. It's a sign that you've been in your head too much and in your presence too little. Creating inner silence is, above all, remembering that you are not the automatic narrator that lives in your head. You are the consciousness that observes it. You are the space where thoughts appear and disappear. You are the sky, not the storm. Inner silence is not a state you reach. It is a place you return to. And you can return at any time. When you breathe, when you feel your body, when you look without interpreting, when you listen without mentally responding, when you stop trying to control your mind and allow it to calm down on its own. Emotional distress decreases when your inner self stops feeling so noisy. And the noise decreases when you regain your role as observer. Many believe that if they stop paying attention to their thoughts, they will miss something important. But the truth is that nothing important comes wrapped in anxiety. Nothing essential requires noise. Nothing true pushes you with anguish. Inner silence allows you to distinguish between what is real and what is imagination, between what matters and what is just a mental echo, between what requires your action and what only exists in your mind as an old habit. When you find that silence, even if only for a few seconds, your heart opens up. Breathing becomes deeper. The body relaxes. The mind makes room, and the stress melts away. It's like suddenly turning on a lamp in the middle of a dark forest, revealing the path. It does not remove trees. The forest doesn't change, but change how you go through it. And that changes everything. Inner silence is not emptiness. It is clarity. It is pure presence. It is the space where you can feel without collapsing, think without getting confused, live without feeling overwhelmed. It is where emotion finds rest, where the mind finds a place to reorganize itself, where you find your center. And from that center, the following practice becomes possible, one of the deepest and most transformative in Buddhism, the radical acceptance of the present moment, which is not resignation, but freedom. It's the art of letting go of what's already here, to stop resisting life, to allow the now to be enough, to stop letting the world feel like an impossible obligation to sustain. That's the next step on the path. If you observe honestly, you will discover that a significant part of your emotional distress does not come from what you experience, but from the internal struggle against what you experience. It is not the present moment that breaks you, but your resistance to accepting it as it is. It's not the emotion that overwhelms you, but the constant struggle with it. It's not the situation that tires you, but the silent effort to want it to be different. The human mind has a natural tendency to resist what is happening. This shouldn't be happening. I don't want to feel this. I can't handle this. I need this to end now. And that resistance, although it seems like a defense, becomes a double burden that ends up wearing you down more than the original situation. That is why the sixth Buddhist method is one of the most transformative and also one of the most misunderstood. The radical acceptance of the present moment. Accepting doesn't mean settling. Accepting doesn't mean giving up on improving your life. Acceptance does not mean tolerating injustice or resigning yourself to suffering. Acceptance means ceasing to fight with what is already here, with what already exists, with what is already part of this moment. It's telling your mind, this is happening. I don't deny it. I don't avoid it. I don't mask it. It is what it is. And if I stop resisting, I will find clarity to act. Buddhism teaches that resistance is like trying to stop a wave with your hands. The harder you try, the harder it hits you. Acceptance doesn't stop the wave, but it allows you to float on it without sinking. Life has tough moments, and it also has emotions that hurt. But when you add resistance, you turn a natural pain into prolonged suffering. Mental resistance generates bodily tension, increases internal pressure, accelerates thoughts, narrows your perspective, and amplifies overwhelm. Acceptance is the opposite. Relaxes the body, opens your mind, expands the internal space, softens the emotion, and restores clarity. Acceptance means allowing the emotion to be present without demanding that it go away immediately. The emotion is not the problem. The problem is your wish that it didn't exist. When you allow emotion to exist, the overwhelm dissolves a little, like ice in the sun. Imagine you are holding a very taut rope. While you hold it taut, the tension runs through your arms, shoulders, and neck. But if you let go by 1 centimeter, just 1 centimeter, relief appears. Accepting means letting go of that centimeter. It's not about abandoning the rope. It's about ceasing to squeeze it desperately. Acceptance also means not demanding that the present moment be different in order for you to be okay. The present will not change under pressure, but you change when you stop fighting with him. When you accept, life stops feeling like an enemy. Stop being an obstacle. It stops being a burden, and it becomes a natural process where you can participate from a place of calm, not from exhaustion. It's like you stop pushing against a wall. The wall is still there, but it no longer wears you down. When you stop resisting, you regain energy, and that energy is what releases the stress. Accepting doesn't mean staying still. Acceptance is not passivity. Acceptance is clarity. It is power. It is wisdom. Because from a place of acceptance, you can act intelligently instead of reacting with desperation. When you accept what you feel, the emotion is allowed to move. When you accept what happens, the mind stops inventing stories to avoid it. When you accept uncertainty, a space of internal stability appears that does not depend on circumstances. When you accept that you cannot control everything, you regain your strength. When you accept the present moment, your overwhelm has nowhere to stand. Radical acceptance is like opening a window in a smoke-filled room. It doesn't eliminate the smoke immediately, but it allows it to escape. And with each moment of acceptance, the air becomes more breathable. Buddhism teaches that acceptance is a form of kindness towards yourself. It's telling your mind, you can rest. You don't have to change the world right now. It's telling your heart, you can feel without hiding. It's telling your body, you don't have to tense up to survive. It's saying to your conscience, I'm with you, even in this. Interestingly, when you accept an emotion, it stops haunting you. When you accept a situation, it stops weighing on you so much. When you accept the present, you reconcile yourself with life, and something very important happens here. When you deeply accept, you can see what you couldn't see before, because resistance distorts, but acceptance reveals. Resistance imprisons you, but acceptance opens you up. Resistance breaks you, but acceptance sustains you. From that space of acceptance, you can connect with the ultimate Buddhist practice for avoiding emotional overwhelm. A practice that not only frees you from the weight you carry, but helps you rebuild an inner center so stable that even intense emotions cease to frighten you. This practice is a deep understanding of your own inner nature, a return to your essence, a recognition that within you there is a place that never breaks, never runs out, and never gets overwhelmed. And that's where we're going now. If you've made it this far, you've probably already felt it inside. Something begins to stir. Something starts to open up. Something loosens within that space, where before there was only pressure. Emotional distress doesn't disappear because life is perfect. It disappears when you remember who you are beyond the noise, beyond the fear, beyond the emotions that come and go like waves crashing on the shore. And therein lies the final Buddhist teaching: to discover, recognize, and inhabit your inner center, that deep place within you that cannot be broken, depleted, or confused by any fleeting emotion. That space has always been with you, even on the worst days, even when you couldn't feel it, even when your mind was so overwhelmed that there seemed to be no way out. Buddhism calls it the nature of mind, pure consciousness, the observer, or simply presence. It is that silent point from which you can look at everything that happens inside and outside of you without becoming it. It is the space that does not think, but understands, that does not react, but sees, that is not overwhelmed, but embraces. Emotional distress makes you forget that place. It pushes you to the surface, where everything affects you, where everything seems urgent, where emotion feels like a threat and not like temporary energy. On the surface, any wave can knock you down. But at the bottom of the ocean, all is calm. Your inner center is that background. There, nothing pushes you. Nothing drags you down. Nothing is required of you. Nothing is shouting at you. There, silence is not emptiness. It is home. The last Buddhist method consists of learning to return to that center again and again until it becomes your natural place, until your mind is no longer scattered, but focused, until your heart is no longer contracted, but expanded, until your life is no longer controlled by what you feel, but guided by the awareness that observes what you feel. Returning to your center is not a technique, it is an inner gesture. It's closing your eyes for a moment and feeling that point of stillness behind your thoughts. It's about listening to your breath as if it were a bridge connecting you to something much bigger than your emotions. It is recognizing that the part of you that observes is never overwhelmed because it is not made of emotion, but of presence. When you connect with your center, even for a second, something profoundly transformative happens. Overwhelm loses its authority. It no longer dictates your rhythm. You no longer control your body. It no longer takes up all your internal space. It's still there, perhaps, but now you see it from a different place, from a point, that doesn't get carried away. The inner center is stable not because you don't feel, but because it doesn't break when you feel. It is strong not because it is rigid, but because it is flexible. He is wise not because he has answers, but because he doesn't get lost in the questions. It is peaceful not because the world is calm, but because it doesn't depend on the world to be calm. When you inhabit your center, overwhelm ceases to be a threat and becomes information. It tells you that you are moving away from yourself. It invites you to return. It reminds you that life is bigger than any temporary emotion. It's as if there were a small but powerful flame inside you. Sometimes the wind stirs it. Sometimes it almost goes out, but it never disappears. And your task is not to protect the flame of the world, but to protect it from oblivion. Forgetting yourself is the true origin of overwhelm. When you forget who you are, any emotion feels enormous. When you remember who you are, no emotion can destroy you. Returning to the center is remembering. Remember that you are not the thought that worries you. Remember that you are not the emotion that weighs you down. Remember that you are not the story your mind tells you. Remember that you are not the expectation that others have placed on you. Remember that you are not the shadow of the past, nor the fear of the future. You are the space where all of that appears. You are the consciousness that sees. You are the presence that sustains. You are the silence behind the noise. You are the calm beneath the storm. When you go back there, life doesn't get easier, but you become broader, more spacious, more capable of supporting you without breaking you, more capable of feeling without collapsing, more able to live without getting overwhelmed. The inner center does not eliminate challenges, but it gives you the necessary foothold to get through them with dignity, clarity, and a deep connection with yourself. It's the home you can always return to, even when everything around you seems overwhelming. And this is the true liberation from emotional distress. Not the absence of intense emotions, but the ability not to get lost within them. Not the absence of thoughts, but the ability not to believe them all. Not the absence of uncertainty, but the inner confidence that allows you to walk even when you don't see the path. Not the absence of pain, but the profound presence that allows you to feel without turning pain into suffering. When you find your center, you no longer need to run away from life to be okay. You no longer need everything to be in order to feel peace. You no longer need to eliminate emotions to feel free. Freedom appears because you discover that no emotion has power over you when you are in your center. And then you understand, overwhelm was never your enemy. It was your compass. Every time it appeared, it was pointing in the same direction. Return to yourself. That's the way. That's the method. That's the medicine. That is true emotional freedom. And when you can return to your center even in the midst of chaos, you will have discovered something that cannot be missed. A place inside you where life doesn't weigh you down, where your mind doesn't drown, where your heart doesn't break. A place where you can simply be.